Hello, sweet friends, and welcome back for another Read Aloud. Today you are in for a treat. We are going to be reading The Talking Eggs. If you are familiar with Reading Rainbow, it's a Reading Rainbow book. It also won the Caldecott Honor Medal for its illustrations. This book is by Robert Sansochi, perhaps, not 100% sure. And the pictures are by Jerry Pickney. Now, this is a book about a girl named Blanch. She lives with her mom and her sister kind of out in the woods. So Blanch is a really sweet girl, but her mom and her sister Rose are not very nice people. So let's see what happens to them when they are so mean to Blanch. The Talking Eggs. It's a folk tale from South America. Back in the old days, there was a widow. A widow means her husband had died somehow. We don't know. The story does not tell us. There was a widow with two daughters named Rose and Blanch. They lived on a farm so poor it looked like the tail end of bad luck. They raised a few chickens, some beans, and a little cotton to get by. Rose, the older sister, was cross and mean and didn't know beans from birds' eggs. That means Rose was grumpy all the time. She was mean. She's not very smart. I bet if someone showed you bird eggs and beans, you would know the difference. Rose doesn't seem to, so she doesn't have a whole lot going on up here. Blanch was sweet and kind and sharp as 40 crickets. But their mother liked Rose the best because they were alike as two peas in a pod. Bad-tempered, sharp-tongued, and always putting on airs. That means pretending that they are better than everyone and anything else, putting on airs. The mother made Blanch do all the work around the place. She had to iron the clothes each morning using an old iron filled with hot coals from the fire, chop cotton in the afternoon, and string beans for supper. Why'd she be doing those chores? Her mama and sister would sit side by side in rocking chairs on the shady porch, fanning themselves and talking foolishness about getting rich and moving to the city, where they could go to fancy balls, wearing trail-trained dresses, and lots of jewels. So here they are on the front porch. So we have Mama, we have Rose, and here's Blanch down there getting the beans ready for supper. Do you feel kind of bad for Blanch? This is her family. Hopefully your family is much kinder to you. One hot day, the mother sent Blanch to the well to fetch a bucket of water. That means they don't have running water in their house. You can't just turn on the faucet like we can. When the girl got there, she found an old woman wrapped in a raggedy black shawl, near fainting from the heat. "Please, child, give me a sip of water," the old woman said. "I'm about to die of thirst." "Yes, auntie," said Blanch, rinsing out her bucket and dipping up some clean, cool well water. "Drink what you need." "Thank you, child," said the old woman when she'd taken swallow after swallow of water. "You got a spirit of do-right in your soul. God is gonna bless you." Then she walked away down the path that led to the deep woods. So Blanch was there getting water for her sister and her mother, and she ran into an old lady. Now, she doesn't know this old lady, and there are a lot of cultures that you either called a grown-up lady an auntie or grown-up man your uncle. So that is why she called her auntie. It doesn't mean that they're related. That's just what she called her, and she was very kind, and she gave her some water because she was old and hot and tired and very thirsty. Beautiful pictures. Well, when Blanch got back to the cabin, her mother and sister hollered at her for taking so long. Maybe they should have got their own water, don't you think? "This water's so warm it's near boiling," shouted Rose, and she dumped the bucket out on the porch. "Here, your poor sister's near dying for a drop of cool water," her mother screamed, "and you can't even bring her that little thing." The two of them scolded and hit Blanch until the frightened girl ran away to the woods. She began to cry since she didn't have anywhere to go, and she was scared to go home. Now, she did the best she could. Water is heavy. Think about a bucket full of water and you have to carry it all the way back from the well to the house. If they want cool water, they're going to have to go to the well themselves. But they are pretty lazy, don't you think? So they made a big fuss, dumped out the water. Look at her mama fussing at Blanche. Rose isn't being any better. So when they start hitting her and yelling at her, Blanche is so scared that she runs into the woods and she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know where to go. There's no one there to help her. Suddenly, around the bend in the path came the old woman in the raggedy black shawl. When she saw Blanche, she asked kindly, "What made you cry so, you poor child?" "Mama and Sister Rose lit into me for something that wasn't my fault," said Blanche, rubbing tears off her cheek. "Now I'm afraid to go home." "Hush, child, stop your crying. You come home with me. I'll give you supper and a clean bed. But you gotta promise you won't laugh at anything you see." Blanche gave her her word of honor that she wouldn't laugh. Then the old woman took her by the hand and led her deep into the backwoods. As they walked along the narrow path, bramble bushes and tree branches bent wide open in front of them and closed behind them. What do you think is afoot here? Do you feel like there's some magic? Now it's interesting. The old lady made Blanche promise not to laugh at anything she sees. What do you think Blanche would see to make her laugh? And why is that so important to the old lady? Do you have some ideas? All right, let's see what happens. Soon they came to the old woman's tumble-down shack. A cow with 2 heads and horns like corkscrews peered over the fence at Blanche and brayed like a mule. Now wait a second. What sound does a cow make? You're right. A cow moos. It doesn't go yee-haw like a donkey. If you saw a cow with 2 heads, curly Q horns that made a donkey noise, wouldn't that be kind of funny? I would have a hard time not laughing. But remember Blanche, she promised, didn't she? We know she's a good girl, so do you think she'll keep her promise? Let's keep reading and see. She reckoned it was a pretty strange sight, but she didn't say anything, not wanting to hurt the old woman's feelings. So look, she didn't laugh. Look at this silly cow. Look at that cow with the 2 heads. You see their horns. Right, so Blanche is being very compassionate. Not only has she promised, but she doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings because sometimes things look silly and they can't really help it. That's how the cow was born. It's like the cow was like, yeah, I want to grow another head, right? All right, let's see what else she saw. Next, she saw that the yard in front of the cabin was filled with chickens of every color. Some were hopping about on 1 leg, some were running about on 3 or 4 or even more legs. These chickens didn't cluck. They whistled like mockingbirds. But strange as all this was, Blanche stuck by her promise not to laugh. Oh my goodness, could you imagine? Chickens, look at those chickens. All those colored chickens. Some have 1 leg, some have lots of legs, and they're whistling like a bird. They're not clucking like chickens. That's some pretty good self-control that Blanche has, not to laugh or even giggle. When they got inside the cabin, the old woman said, "Light the fire, child, and cook us some supper." So Blanche fetched the kindling from the woodpile outside by the back door. The old woman sat down near the fireplace and took off her head. Yes, took off her head. So she takes her head and she takes it off. If you were at someone's house and they took their head off, would that kind of freak you out a little bit? You might be like, what's going on, right? She set her head on her knees like a pumpkin. First she combed out her gray hair. Then she plaited it into 2 long braids. Blanche got pretty scared at this, but the woman had been nothing but kind to her, so she went on lighting the fire. After a bit, the old woman put her head back on her shoulders and looked at herself in a sliver of mirror nailed to the cabin wall. She said, nodding. "That's better." Then she gave Blanche an old beef bone and said, "Put this in the pot for supper." Now Blanche was near starving, and the bone looked like a pretty sad meal for 2 people. But she did what the old woman said. "Shall I boil it for soup, Auntie?" she asked. "Look at the pot, child," the old woman said, laughing. The pot was filled with a thick stew bubbling away. Next, the woman gave Blanche only 1 grain of rice and told her to grind it in a stone mortar, which is like a little stone bowl you put it in, and it has like a stone handle that you can use to like smash it up and grind something up into like a powder. So she gave her 1 little piece of rice and told her to put it in there. Let's see. Feeling mighty foolish, Blanche began to pound the grain with the heavy stone pestle. In a moment, the mortar was overflowing with rice. When they had finished supper, the old woman said, "It's a fine moonshiny night, child. Come with me." So look, here's the old lady. She's put her head back on. Do you see her looking in the mirror? And here's Blanche sitting, and she's watching all this like, oh my goodness. Now, if someone just gave you a little bone and told you to make dinner, would you have questions and say, "What am I supposed to do with this?" Blanche doesn't question anything. She's very respectful. She didn't laugh at the cows. She didn't laugh at the chickens. She didn't ask questions. When the old lady took off her head, Blanche didn't say a word. She didn't even let out her fear. When the old lady gave her just 1 bone to put in the pot, Blanche just did what she was told. And it turned into a thick stew, right? And then when she gave her 1 piece of rice, Blanche did what she was told, and it turned into all this rice. So far, Blanche is doing a great job at being respectful and listening, because the lady's been really nice to her, and she doesn't want to hurt her feelings. So let's see what happens next. They set themselves down on the back porch steps. After a time, a dozen or so of rabbits came out from the underbrush and formed a circle in the yard. The men rabbits had on frock-tail coats, and the lady rabbits had on little trail-train dresses. They danced standing on their hind feet, hopping about. 1 big rabbit played a banjo, and the old woman hummed along with it. Blanche kept time by clapping along. The rabbits did a square dance, a Virginia reel, and even a cakewalk. The girl felt so happy, she never wanted to leave. She sat and clapped until she fell asleep, and the old woman carried her inside and put her to bed. Look at these rabbits. They're dressed super fancy. Do you see their coattail coats? See how long they are? And the girl rabbits had on these beautiful dresses. They're having a dance party in the front yard. Again, not something that you normally would see, right? But Blanche is just having a good time. She's out there clapping along and watching this show. And eventually she does fall asleep. So what do you think will happen next? When she wakes up, what do you think she's going to see in the morning? Tell the person next to you. And if you don't have any friends next to you, whisper it. Throw it. Oh, I hear your idea. Let's see if you're right. When Blanche got up the next morning, the old woman told her, "Go milk my cow." The girl did what she was told, and the 2-headed cow with the curly horns gave her a bucket of the sweetest milk she had ever tasted. They had it with their morning coffee. "You gotta go home now, child," the old woman said to Blanche, who was washing the breakfast dishes. "But I tell you, things will be better for you here on out. And since you're such a good girl, I got a present for you. Go out into the chicken house. Any eggs that say, 'Take me,' you go ahead and take. But if you hear any say, 'Don't take me,' you leave them be. When you get near your house, throw those eggs, one after the other, over your left shoulder so they break on the road behind you. Then you'll get a surprise." When Blanche got to the little chicken house, she found all the nests filled with eggs. Half were gold or silver or covered in jewels. Half looked no different from regular eggs that she got from her chickens back home. All the plain eggs said, "Take me." All the fancy ones cried, "Don't take me." She wished she could take just 1 gold or silver or jeweled egg, but she did what the old woman told her and only scooped up the plain ones. Now, again, Blanche is following the directions. She's doing what she's told, even though it's so hard for her not to pick up those beautiful eggs. But if they say, "Don't take me," she has to leave them, right? So here she is getting the eggs. There's some jeweled ones down here at the bottom, some pretty ones. But look at the ones in her basket with the faces. They're just plain white eggs. Now, when she gets close to her house, her job is to throw them over her left shoulder so they'll crack on the road. What do you think will happen when they do that? All right, let's see. She and the old woman waved goodbye to each other. Then Blanche went on her way. Partway home, she began to toss the eggs one at a time over her left shoulder. All sorts of wonderful things spilled out of those eggs. Diamonds and rubies, gold and silver coins, pretty silk dresses and dainty satin shoes. There was even a handsome carriage that grew in a wink from the size of a matchbox, and a fine brown and white pony that sprouted from the size of a cricket to draw it. So look, here's Blanche throwing those eggs. Look at those beautiful dresses and coins, and look at the carriage and the pony to pull it. Look at her face. She's like, "Oh, that's amazing." Now, when she gets home, what's her mama and sister gonna think? Remember, they're the ones always talking about going to the city and being fancy and going to parties. Now, Blanche is gonna show up with all this fancy stuff. How do you think they're gonna treat her? All right, let's find out. Blanche loaded all these lovely things into the carriage and rode the rest of the way home like a grand lady. When she got back to the cabin, her mother and sister just gawked at her new finery. "Where'd you get all those things?" her mother asked, making Rose help Blanche carry the treasures inside. That evening, the mother cooked dinner for the first time since Blanche was old enough to hold a skillet. All that time telling Blanche what a sweet daughter she was. Her mama got the girl to tell her about the old woman in the woods, in the cabin, and the talking eggs. When Blanche was asleep, the mother grabbed Rose and told her, "You gotta go into the woods tomorrow morning and find that old aunty. Then you'll get some of those talking eggs for yourself so as we can have fine dresses and jewels like your sister. When you get back, I'll chase Blanche off and keep her things for myself. Then we'll go to the city and be fine ladies like we were meant to be." "Can't we just run her off tonight so I don't have to go poking through the woods looking for some crazy old auntie?" Rose whined. "That's not near enough for two people," her mother said, getting angry. "So you do as I say and don't be so contrary." Contrary kind of means argumentative. So look, there's Blanche sleeping. And her mom's talking to Rose, telling her, "You're going to have to go find this lady. Go find some of those eggs so we can have nice stuff too." Now, don't you think Blanche would share with her family? Sure she would. She's a great girl. Like, she has no reason to be selfish about any of this, but her mom is like, "This is not enough for even one person. We need more." They're very greedy, aren't they? So the next morning, Rose set out, dragged foot into the woods. That means she didn't really want to go, so she's kind of shuffling along. She dawdled mostly, but soon met the old woman in her raggedy black shawl. "My sweet little sister Blanche told me you got a real pretty house and all," said Rose. "I'd appreciate to see it." "You can come with me if you've mind to," said the old woman, "but you got to promise not to laugh at whatever you see." "I swear," said Rose. Now we know Rose. Is that going to be true? So the old woman led her through the bramble bushes and tree branches into the deep woods. But when they got near the cabin and Rose saw the two-headed cow that brayed like a mule and the funny-looking chickens that sang like mockingbirds, she yelled, "If ever there was a sight, that's one. That's the stupidest thing in the world." Then she laughed and laughed until she nearly fell down. Oh, Rose did not keep her promise, did she? She's laughing and calling them names and pointing. Shame on her. Sorry, the timer's going off in the background because there's cake in the oven, so we'll go get that in just a second. Said the old woman, shaking her head. Inside, Rose complained when she was asked to start the fire, and she wound up with more smoke than flame. When the old woman gave her an old bone to put in the pot for supper, Rose said crossly, That's gonna make a mighty poor meal. She dropped it in the pot, but the old bone remained a bone. So they had only thin soup for supper. When the old woman gave her 1 grain of rice to grind in the mortar, Rose said, "That sad speck won't hardly feed a fly." She wouldn't lift the pestle, so they had no rice at all. The old woman muttered. Rose went to bed hungry. All night long she heard mice scratching under the floor and screeching owls clawing out the window. So I'm going to leave you with this picture. I think you can see that. Oh, nope, not really, can you? Look at what Rose is doing. Can you tell what Rose is up to? Right there. Oops. Right there. We have a dog visitor, don't we? Look. Oh, she's taking the old lady's head. Oh my gosh. Rose went to bed hungry and she heard those mice scratching. In the morning, the old woman told her to milk the cow. Rose did, but she made fun of the 2-headed creature, and all she got was a little sour milk, not fit for drinking. So they had their breakfast coffee without cream. When the old woman lifted her head off her shoulders to brush her hair, quick as a wink, Rose grabbed that head and said, "I'm not going to put you back together till you give me presents like you gave my sister." All right. So I ran to go get the cake out of the oven. Think about what has happened to Rose. She didn't keep her promise. She laughed at the animals, right? She complained about lighting the fire, so the fire wasn't very good. She whined about the bone for dinner, so it didn't turn into stew, did it? She made fun of that little piece of rice and said it wasn't enough to feed a fly, and so they didn't have any rice. So what have you noticed? She made fun of the cow, and the cow did not give good milk, right? And now she has taken the old lady's head and is telling her she cannot have her head back until she gives her presents, like she gave Blanche. It seems like the magic works if you do what you're asked to do. Do you agree? Blanche did everything she was asked to do. She didn't hear mice scratching at night. She got to watch a bunny dance, right? She had a great dinner with the old lady because she didn't complain and she didn't whine. They had delicious milk because she didn't make fun of that silly cow. So it turns out you may think something is silly, but it may actually turn out to not be so bad after all. Rose, on the other hand, she just whines a whole lot, and so she hasn't got anything good out this visit. Now let's see what the old lady says in order to get her head back. "Ah, child, you're a wicked girl," said the old woman's head, "but I got to have my body back, so I'll tell you what to do. Go to the chicken house and take those eggs that say, 'Take me,' but leave the ones that cry, 'Don't take me.' Then you toss those eggs over your right shoulder on your way home." To be sure the old woman wasn't playing a trick, Rose set the old woman's head out on the porch while her body sat groping around the cabin. Then she ran to the chicken house. Inside, all the plain eggs said, "Take me," while all the gold and silver and jeweled ones said, "Don't take me." You think I'm fool enough to listen to you and pass up the prettiest eggs? Not on your life. Are we surprised by this? I bet you could have guessed Rose wasn't going to follow directions. So Rose grabbed all the gold and silver and jeweled eggs that kept yelling, "Don't take me, don't take me, don't take me," and off she ran into the woods with them. Ooh, Rose, you in trouble. So look at Rose's basket. Those are not white plain eggs, are they? She took all the fancy ones. She hasn't learned her lesson yet, has she? Now, Did you notice the old lady told her to throw them over her right shoulder and not her left? Because Blanche used the left, she told Rose to use her right. What do you think's going to come out of these eggs? Anything? Do you think she's going to get all those fancy things that her sister got? Are you ready to find out and see what she gets? All right, I think you're going to like this part. As soon as she was out of sight of the old woman's cabin, she tossed the eggs right over her right shoulder as fast as she could. Then out of the shells came clouds of whip snakes, toads, frogs, yellow jackets, and a big old gray wolf. These began to chase after her like pigs after a pumpkin. Hollering bloody murder, Rose ran all the way to her mother's cabin. When the woman saw the swarm of things chasing her daughter, she tried to rescue her with a broom. But the wasps and the wolf and all the other creatures wouldn't be chased off. So mother and daughter hightailed it into the woods with all the animals following. Did Rose get nice things like Blanche? No, she didn't. And now those animals are chasing the mom and Rose off into the woods. Now where's Blanche, you might be wondering? Why didn't the animals go after her? When Mama and Rose returned home, angry and sore and stung and covered with mud, they found Blanche had gone to the city to live like a grand lady, though she remained as kind and generous as always. For the rest of their lives, Rose and her mother tried to find the strange old woman's cabin and the talking eggs, but they could never find that place again. And look, here's the cabin. So, even though Mom and Rose were not nice to Blanche, it did not make Blanche a bad person. She was still a very good girl on the inside. She knew what was right and what was wrong, even if her mom and sister did not treat her with much respect at all, and they weren't kind to her. So in the end, because Blanche was good, she got great things. Her mother and her sister Rose did not get great things because they just weren't very good people. So it pays to make sure that you think of others and how you treat them and how you react to things. Like laughing to be mean, or if you think it might hurt someone's feelings, isn't really the right thing to do. If you think about Blanche, she tried really hard not to laugh at the old lady's chickens and cows and everything else, and she followed directions and she did what she was asked. So the next time that you maybe see someone who's in trouble or needs something, or maybe they have something that you might look funny, but it might be really important to that person, think about how they might feel if you laugh at them. Think about Blanche. Be Blanche. Don't be Rose. I hope you enjoyed the talking eggs today. Find someone in your house today and tell them about the story of Blanche, the old auntie or auntie in the woods, and the terrible mother and sister Rose, and what happened to them at the end of the story. All right, friends. I hope that you'll come back next time for another story together. Be kind to each other. Bye.